What comes to mind for you when you think about power? Is it uh, control, influence, maybe even coercion? For so many of us, the image of power is often tied to the headlines. The politicians, the CEOs, the celebrities. But what if our everyday understanding of power, this deeply ingrained concept, is actually fundamentally flawed? Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into a body of work that truly re-examines how we understand power. We'll be exploring insights from Dacher Keltner's groundbreaking book, The Power Paradox, drawing from his, 2 decades of dedicated research. And we have our expert here to unpack what makes his findings so compelling and why they're incredibly relevant to your life.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Keltner identifies this core pattern he calls the power paradox.
Mhm.
It's this intriguing observation that the very qualities allowing us to rise and influence are often the first things we abandon once we feel powerful.
Yeah.
It's a really critical insight into human social dynamics.
Right. So our mission today is to cut through the noise, examine Keltner's research as laid out in the Power Paradox, and extract the most important nuggets. We want to help you understand this paradox, how it shapes your daily life, and ultimately how you can navigate it for, lasting influence. Okay, let's unpack this. For centuries, our culture's understanding of power has been heavily shaped by Niccolo Machiavelli, particularly his infamous book, The Prince.
Indeed. Machiavelli argued that power is essentially about force, fraud, ruthlessness, and strategic violence. He conjures images of dictators, hostile corporate takeovers, or maybe even schoolyard bullies. This view suggests power is something you grab. And, it made a lot of sense in the 16th century when he wrote at a time when, frankly, murder was about 100 times more common and torture was, a public spectacle.
Yeah, that context is important. And Machiavelli's view certainly resonates with dramatic narratives like Macbeth or The Godfather. But in our modern world, with its global movements and interconnectedness, does Keltner suggest this purely coercive model is simply outdated, or does it fundamentally misinterpret how real influence is actually built?
That's precisely the question Keltner poses. He points out that if power is only about coercive force, it doesn't explain massive social changes like, say, the abolition of slavery, the toppling of dictators, or the rise of civil rights movements. His work suggests this Machiavellian view blinds us to the true nature and, honestly, the pervasiveness of power in our daily lives. In fact, there was one study looking from 1900 to 2006 that found nonviolent tactics were actually twice as likely to lead to gains in political power.
Twice as likely, wow.
Yeah. Often people resort to coercive force precisely when their power is already slipping. It's almost a sign of weakness in a way. So Keltner offers a fresh definition. Power is the capacity to make a difference in the world, specifically by stirring others in our social networks. This means power isn't just for a select few. It defines the waking life of every human being.
Every human being.
Absolutely. From getting a 2-year-old to eat, green vegetables to inspiring a colleague at work. Power is the medium through which we relate to one another. It's about influencing others, whether that's by stimulating new ideas, lifting up those in need, or directing resources. It's dynamic, it's always in flux, and it's part of every single interaction.
That's a complete paradigm shift. So if power isn't grabbed, if it's given, what are the precise mechanisms or actions that compel others to grant us this influence? What does Keltner's research pinpoint as the key drivers?
Well, his scientific inquiry reveals this profound shift. Power is given to us by others. We gain influence by acting in ways that improve the lives of people in our social networks. This holds true everywhere at work, in friendships, even in families. And it has deep evolutionary roots. Our hypersocial species, hunter-gatherers, they learn to band together and constrain those who might abuse power, granting it instead to those who advance the greater good. Our power as a species was fundamentally social.
It sounds like a significant part of Keltner's argument rests on how crucial our social perception is. He even describes our species as reputation mad, doesn't he?
He does, and it's a critical point. Your power is really only as good as your reputation. Groups construct reputations to track an individual's capacity for power, and importantly, to provide a check against its potential abuse. Gossip, far from being idle chatter, is actually a sophisticated means by which groups spread information that feeds into these reputations.
So gossip isn't just malicious.
Not always, no. It's how a group tracks who advances its interests and who doesn't. Often, it specifically targets those who seek power at the expense of others. For instance, in a study Keltner cites of a sorority at UC Berkeley, the frequent targets of gossip were well known, sure, but notably unkind and, Machiavellian.
Interesting. So what kind of person does get given power then, according to the research?
Keltner's research across various settings, college dorms, fraternities, Summer camps, even observations of chimpanzee communities consistently show something surprisingly straightforward. Power flows to individuals who embody what he calls the big five social tendencies. And these aren't about brute force or, slick charisma necessarily.
Okay, what are they?
They are enthusiasm, kindness, focus, calmness, and openness.
Enthusiasm, kindness, focus, calmness, openness.
Enthusiasm, kindness, focus, calmness, openness. Exactly. These are the people who advance the greater good. Even in Frans de Waal's famous observations at Arnhem Zoo, leaders like the chimp Louet gained power over Jeroen not through violence, but by literally keeping the peace and grooming other chimps. It demonstrates how groups give power to those who benefit the collective.
And there's this idea of status too, right? How does that fit in?
Right. Groups also empower individuals through what Keltner calls status-enhancing esteem. It feels good to do good because groups strategically give esteem to those who benefit the collective. Think of the Netzilik Inuit who share seal meat, or tribes in New Guinea who give away yams. The more they give, the higher their status. This desire for status drives what Keltner terms arms races of generosity. This whole process, in turn, helps keep the powerful in check, counteracting selfish tendencies.
So lasting influence depends on people continuing to give us power. That makes total sense. But Keltner points out a pivotal moment, what we do with that power once we have it. It's a real fork in the road, isn't it?
It absolutely is. The key to enduring power, Keltner argues, is actually pretty simple, though maybe not easy. Stay focused on other people. Prioritize others' interests as much as your own. He identifies 4 specific social practices that have deep evolutionary origins in human cooperation.
Okay, what are those 4?
First, empathy. Understanding what others feel. Abraham Lincoln, who's widely recognized for his enduring power, was apparently described as a genius at knowing the minds of others. Paying careful attention to emotional expressions helps navigate interactions and build trust, reducing misunderstandings. Keltner's studies show high empathy individuals perform better in teams and leadership roles because they're attuned to others' emotions and can coordinate collaboration. For example, groups with more women, who often score higher in empathy tests, showed better performance on collective intelligence tasks.
Makes sense. What's next?
Second, giving. Providing rewards, whether tangible like food or money, or social like respect. Keltner highlights touch as a particularly powerful, evolutionarily old means of giving. Chimpanzees groom for alliances. In humans, a reassuring pat or a warm embrace elicits oxytocin, that hormone that promotes trust and cooperation. In studies of NBA basketball teams, the more players touched one another, like high fives, fist bumps, pats on the back early in the season, the more cohesive and efficient the team played later on, regardless of skill or salary.
Wow, that's tangible.
It really is. It embodies that South African concept of Ubuntu. I am human because I belong. Giving connects us.
Okay. Empathy, giving. What's number 3?
Third is gratitude, expressing reverence for what's given to us. Now, practicing gratitude inwardly is beneficial for the individual, reduces stress, increases positive emotions, all that good stuff. But Keltner emphasizes its outward expression. Doing so through touch, words, or actions builds stronger social ties and generates what he calls contagious goodwill. His romantic partner study showed couples expressing subtle gratitude, just small acknowledgments, were 3 times more likely to stay together 6 months later.
Say times.
Yeah. It dignifies others and activates reward circuits in the brain for both the giver and the receiver. Power.
And the final one?
Finally, storytelling. Telling stories that unite others in a common cause. Lincoln, again, honed his storytelling ability, using it to build his network and navigate really complex politics. Studies on teasing in fraternities and even taunting at a basketball camp showed that better, more playful storytelling correlated with higher status and respect. Good stories generate shared mirth, they put conflicts into context, and they even help individuals make sense of stressful experiences. They promote connection and cooperation. They help us understand our identity and purpose.
So these are the practices, empathy, giving, gratitude, storytelling, that truly bring out the best in human nature, allowing us to rise and sustain power. But this is the power paradox, so it makes me wonder, what happens when we lose that focus on others? What's the downside? Where does the paradox bite?
Ah, yes. That's the heart of the paradox, exactly. Lord Acton's famous maxim, power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely, is strongly supported by Keltner's scientific studies. It's not just a saying. The very skills that enabled us to gain power in the first place, empathy, giving, respect, they vanish when we lose focus on others. When people enjoy elevated power, unchecked power, they are more likely to eat impulsively, have sexual affairs, violate traffic laws, lie, cheat, and just generally be rude.
Why does this happen, though? Why do we betray the very principles that brought us influence and respect in the first place? Does Keltner pinpoint a psychological switch? Is it like a switch flips?
He absolutely does. Keltner explains that when we experience absolute power, power that's unchecked by collective processes and accountability, our attention, which is a limited resource, shifts. It moves away from others and towards our own interests and desires. And this leads to 4 primary abuses, as meticulously laid out in the power paradox.
Okay, what are they?
First, empathy deficits and diminished moral sentiments. Our capacity to understand what others think and feel, and thus our compassion, our gratitude, our inspiration, it just fades. Keltner's ladder exercise study showed that simply feeling powerful, just by comparing oneself to the less fortunate on this imaginary ladder, eroded participants' ability to read others' emotions accurately.
Just feeling powerful did that.
Just the feeling. Other studies showed upper-class individuals displaying less activation in empathy-related brain networks and less vagal nerve response. That's a key physiological indicator of compassion when viewing images of suffering. Power even degrades our instinct for mimicry, which is the foundation of empathy.
That's quite concerning. What's the second abuse?
Second, self-serving impulsivity. Power makes us more likely to act on selfish desires, neglecting the impact on others. Keltner has some striking examples from his research, like randomly assigned high-power participants in one study were nearly twice as likely to take a second cookie from a shared plate.
The cookie experiment. I've heard of that.
Yes. And apparently they often ate it impulsively, mouths open, crumbs everywhere. It sounds minor, but it's indicative. Also, wealthier drivers were significantly more likely to cut off others at 4-way stops or ignore pedestrians in crosswalks. Studies even linked higher wealth to increased shoplifting and greater endorsement of unethical behavior across multiple countries. It's a fascinating and, frankly, somewhat unsettling pattern.
That second cookie study is really illustrative. It makes you wonder what small, unconscious behaviors we might all exhibit when we feel a little more powerful. I know I'll be watching my own snack habits a bit more closely now.
It certainly offers a moment for reflection, doesn't it? The third abuse is incivility and disrespect. The powerful become prone to violating basic rules of politeness and cooperative communication. They interrupt more, they make more direct demands, and Keltner found they are 3 times more likely to perpetrate rudeness and profanity in the workplace compared to those with less power. Their comments can become too sharp-edged, ignoring common courtesy.
Okay, empathy deficits, impulsivity, disrespect. What's the fourth?
Fourth, and perhaps the most subtly insidious, are narratives of exceptionalism. To rationalize their elevated rank and their abuses, those with power often craft stories of their own unique talents and extraordinary qualities. They might even start believing they are somehow biologically different from others.
Really? Biologically different?
It sounds extreme, but this mindset leads to blaming victims and justifying inequality. Keltner's studies show wealthier individuals are more likely to attribute success purely to the individual effort and genes, rather than acknowledging broader social factors or luck. These narratives persist, from Victorian-era survival of the fittest theories used to justify social strata, to modern justifications for exorbitant CEO compensation, even when empirical data shows little actual effect of CEO behavior on organizational performance.
Wow.
And these abuses of power don't just harm others. They directly undermine the powerful person's ability to maintain enduring influence. They lose the respect and esteem of the very people their power depends on. It's the paradox in full swing. They sabotage themselves.
Keltner's research takes us beyond the powerful to examine the profound consequences for those without power. I understand he draws from his own childhood experiences on a poor, rural town to illuminate the true costs of powerlessness. What did he uncover there? What did he see?
Yeah, his personal experience seems to really inform this part of the book. He deeply challenges common myths about the poor being lazy or unmotivated, stereotypes basically.
Yeah.
Instead, his research reveals that powerlessness itself is a major determinant of physical and mental suffering. The price of powerlessness manifests in 4 devastating ways, according to Keltner.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, continual threat. People in low-income neighborhoods often face more dangerous physical environments, think pollution, noise. But it's also institutional threats, things like racial profiling by police or job and housing rejections based just on identity. The underrepresentation of women in power, for instance, leads to increased sexual violence. This chronic vigilance to threat, even in subtle interactions like how a store clerk approaches you, leads to hypervigilant brains. There's greater amygdala activation, brain's alarm center. It's always on high alert.
Constantly scanning for danger, that sounds exhausting.
It is. And it leads to the second point, chronic stress. Powerlessness is the most robust trigger of the stress hormone cortisol that we know of. Studies using tasks like the Trier-social stress task, which is designed to induce stress, show heightened cortisol responses when a person's social identity feels devalued. Even just adopting a powerless body posture, slouched shoulders, clasped hands can increase cortisol and decrease testosterone. This chronic stress damages the brain, strengthening connections between threat detection and identity regions, and it just compromises overall well-being.
So the stress is literally changing the brain.
Literally. Which brings us to the third cost: undermined ability to contribute to society. The chronic stress associated with powerlessness impairs sexual response, it impairs intellectual function, leading to worse decision-making and creativity, and it even stunts brain development in children. Some studies show poor children's brains can be 5% smaller by age 11, particularly in regions vital for language, planning, reasoning, and stress regulation.
5% smaller. That's staggering.
It is. And this ultimately robs people of their potential and purpose. It leads to less happiness, increased anxiety, and higher vulnerability to depression.
And the fourth manifestation?
Fourth, poor health. Simply put, powerlessness is a fast track to disease and shortened lives. Keltner cites dozens of studies showing a direct link between lower social class and worse health outcomes, higher rates of chronic illness, obesity, cardiovascular disease. Crucially, powerlessness can even damage telomeres, those protective caps on our DNA strands that influence cellular aging.
So it affects us right down to our DNA.
Exactly. Growing up poor, for example, can shave 6 years off a person's life expectancy, even if they achieve upward mobility later in life. It predisposes them to chronic inflammation and various diseases. The impact is profound and long-lasting.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's so clear that the problems of power and powerlessness are deeply intertwined, affecting the very fabric of society. Keltner's personal experiences on Coyote Drive seem to have truly illuminated how these dynamics play out in stark, real, and often tragic ways.
Absolutely. The power paradox is truly pervasive. It touches every facet of our lives, from family dynamics to work to broader society. But Keltner, in the power paradox, doesn't just leave us there. He offers genuine hope. He believes we can transcend this paradox. He lays out a 5-fold path to enduring power.
Hey, what's the path? How do we navigate this?
First, be aware of your feelings of power. Recognize that thrill of making a difference as your true purpose. Don't mistake it for the superficial trappings like money or fame. That feeling itself will direct you to how you are best equipped to contribute to the greater good.
Awareness, got it.
Second, practice humility. Understand that power is a gift given by others. Remain critical of your own work. Encourage skepticism and pushback from others. Remember, influencing others is a privilege, not a right.
Humility keeps you grounded.
Precisely. Third, stay focused on others and give. Generosity is the most direct path to enduring power. Empower those in your social networks. Empowered individuals are happier, and mutually empowered relationships lead to stronger ties and greater collective well-being, really at every level of society.
Focus on others and give. That links back to how we gain power initially.
Exactly. It closes the loop. Fourth, practice respect. Dignify others. Ask questions, listen intently, acknowledge them, compliment them, express gratitude. The powerful often abandon these essential practices of civility first, and Keltner's work shows just how vital they are for maintaining those social bonds.
Respect. Seems basic, but easily lost.
Very easily lost under the influence of power. And fifth, this is crucial. Change the psychological context of powerlessness. Actively fight stigma, racism, sexism, homophobia, inequality in all its forms. Create opportunities for the disempowered to feel valued and contribute. This means reducing threats to people's identities and increasing feelings of worth, allowing everyone to flourish.
So it's not just about individual behavior, but changing the systems too.
Absolutely, it's both. Keltner's hope isn't for some kind of power-free utopia that's unrealistic. It's for a society where all people have as much power as possible. Because when we learn to outsmart the power paradox, both individually and collectively, we enable more people to make the unique difference in the world they are truly suited to make.
A powerful message indeed. This raises an important question for you, our listener, as you reflect on this deep dive into the power paradox. What single small act of generosity or respect can you put into practice today, maybe even right after listening to this, to not only empower someone else, but to reinforce your own enduring power, living out Keltner's insights? Something to think about.